Hi and welcome. In this video I'm going to show you how you can build login and registration form using C++. And the goal of this video is that we practice together building user interfaces with C++. And for that we are going to use C++ Builder, which is, in my opinion, one of the best tools that you can use in order to build C++ user interfaces very fast. So I'm going to leave the link in the description so that you can download it. And also, if you need help, if you're a beginner and if you need a little bit of introduction, I already made one video which is more beginner friendly than this one. So make sure to watch that video first. I will link it here. I will also link it in the description, and then you can come back and watch this video. So before I show you the application that we are going to build, I just want to say thank you to all the people who support me, and I also want to say thank you to the sponsor of this video, which is you guys, because I recently created an account on a site called Buy Me a Coffee, and I am so grateful to the people who support me that way, because you guys help me to create a lot more educational videos like this one. So thank you very much. And I also want to give you something more. I also want to create some additional materials where I will share extra knowledge and where I will share all of my programming experience. So you can let me know what are some topics that you would like to see and what are most common problems that you have with programming, so that I can help you the best way that I can. And those materials are going to be available on the link that I will put in the description, or I will pin it in a comment. And depending on when you are watching this video, they might already be available. So with that being said, let me show you the application that we are going to build. So here is the application that we are going to build. And as you can see, it has the option to log in and to register a new user. So let's first register a user, and then we are going to try to log in with that user. So I will click on registration, and here you need to input 4 things: name, age, username, and password. So I will say that the name is Saldina, and then age is 26, username is CodeBeauty, and then let's say that password is CodeBeauty123. Like this. So I will click confirm, and the data has been saved and the form has been closed, which means that now we can try to log in with that user. So the username was CodeBeauty, and then password was CodeBeauty123. But let's first try to enter a wrong password. Let's say, for example, 1235. And if I click on confirm, as you can see here, we get a message which says error. You can write out wrong password or wrong username or something like that. And then if I try to enter a correct password and I click confirm, as you can see here, we get a different message which says success. So this is the application that I'm going to show you how to build, and then I will also give you a few tips on how you can upgrade this application and how you can use it in order to practice on your own. So the first step to build this application is to create a new project. So I will say create a new multi-device application with C++ Builder. It is going to be blank application. I will click OK, and here I have my first form. So that is the first step. And then the second step is we need to create all the forms that we saw. And those are 3 forms: main form, login, and then registration form. So this form here that already came when we created a project, I will just rename it so that it is called main form. So I will right click on this unit1.cpp, and I will say rename, and I will say that its name is going to be main form, like this. Okay, and inside we have mainform.cpp, which is our CPP file, and then mainform.fmx, which is this design file, and then we have mainform.h, which is header file. So we created mainform, and then let's create 2 more forms: registration and login. So right click on your project and say add new multi-device form, and it is going to be HD form. Click OK, and it should create this unit2.cpp. This is going to be our login form, so I will rename it so that it is called login form.cpp. And let's create a third form. So add new multi-device form and then HD form, and this one we are going to rename so that it is called registration form. Like this. So that was second step. The third step is to change some properties of the forms that we just created. And if you're not familiar with what are properties of different controls, I recommend you to watch the introduction video to building user interfaces with C++, which I will link in the description. So the first one that I will work on is my login form. So I will click on loginform.fmx, and there are two things that I want to change. I want to change the name property in this object inspector. So name of this form is currently form2, and I will change that so that it is called, for example, my login form. So my login form. Okay, and then I also want to change the caption of that form. So caption is here, and it is currently also form2. I will change it so that it says login. Okay. And then I will do the same for my registration form. So I will click on registration form and then registration form.fmx, and I will change its caption so that it says registration. And then I will also change the name property, and I will call it my registration form. Okay, and then let's do the same for the main form. So main form.fmx, caption is going to be main, and then name is going to be my main form. So here I will say my main form. Okay, so let's see what we have achieved so far. So I'm going to run the program. Okay, and the form that is shown is the main form. And as you can see, here is the caption of that form. And when we open login form, it should say login, and then when we open registration form, it should say here registration. So that is what we have achieved so far. So the next step is that we add different controls to these forms. So as you already could see, our registration form should have 4 fields: name, age, username, and password. So 4 edits, 4 input fields, and then labels as well. And then we also need a button that we will use to save that data. So I will click on registration.fmx, and I will very quickly use this palette in order to add 4 edits and 4 labels. So let's do that. I will say edit. Okay, this is input field. I'll make it a little bit bigger, and then I will also add a label. I'll put it here. Okay, and let's change the text of this label and also the name of this edit, because we are going to use this input field, this edit, in our C++ code so that we can get the text that our user inputs into this field. So I don't want this field to be called what is its current name? Its current name is edit1, so that is very generic name. What I want it to be called instead is, for example, name edit, like this. And then for this label 1, I want to change its text property so that it says name, like this. Okay, so I will copy these two. I will copy them 4 times. Okay, and then here as well. And I will change this label. I will change its text to age, and then I will change the name of this edit so that it is called age edit. So here I will say age edit, and then this third label should have the text which says username, and then this edit will be called username edit. So its name is here, and it will be called username edit. Okay, and then fourth label should have the text which says password, and this edit should have the name of password edit, like this. So those are 4 things that we need, and then we also need a button. I'll put it here. I'll make it a little bit bigger, and this button here should have the text which says save, and then the name of this button that we will use in order to refer to this button from our C++ code. That name is going to be save button. Okay, so this here is our registration form, and we have finished building the interface for our registration form. Now let's build the interface of our login form. So our login form is going to be smaller, and it should have only 2 edits, one for username, one for password, and then we are also going to add a button which says login. So I will add an edit. I will put it here, and I will also add a label. I will put that label here. I'll just make this edit a little bit smaller. So the text of this label is going to be username, like this, and then the name of this edit is going to be username edit. So let's find name property. It is here. So username edit. Okay, and then let's copy this one more time. So you use Control-C and then Control-V. You just select all the controls that you want to copy, like this. So let's change this label's text so that it says password. And then the name of this edit is going to be password edit, like this. And then one more thing that we need is a button. And I will put that button here, make it a little bit bigger, and I will change its text to login. And then the name is going to be login button, like this. And with this, we have successfully built the interface for our login form. So the only form that remains is our main form, and if you remember from the beginning of this video, the main form should contain only 2 buttons so that you can navigate yourself to either registration or to login. So I will open mainform.fmx, and here I will just add 2 buttons. So one button will be here, and I will copy it once more and paste it here. So the text of this first button will say login, like this, and then its name is going to be login navigation button. So let's find its name property and let's say login navigation button. And then this second button, its name is going to be registration navigation button. So let's write it here, like this, and then it should have the text which says registration. Okay, so with this we have successfully created the interfaces for our main form and then login form and registration form. So the next step is to create this navigation here, because the only form that we can access right now if we run the program is going to be our main form. So what I'm going to do in the next step is I will create 2 event handlers, one for login button and then second one for this registration button. So when our user clicks on login, he should be navigated to login form, and then when he clicks on registration, he should be navigated to registration form. So let's do that. So make sure to stop this program before you start changing the code. And I am going to navigate myself to main form, but inside this CPP folder, so mainform.cpp, that is where we are going to write the code for our event handlers. Now, one question for you is, how are we going to create an event handler? And the event handler that I want to create is the one that happens when I click on login button or on registration button. There are 2 ways to do that. The first way is to click on your login button and then to look for that event here. And as you can see here, we have different events. So on can focus, on click, on double click, on drag drop, and so on. And then the second and easier way to create on click event is to double click on that control. So when I double clicked on my login navigation button, as you can see, it had created a handler called login navigation button on click. And inside this function here, we are going to describe what happens when we click on login button. And what should happen is that we should show our login form. So I'm going to say my login form, and then I will say show, like this. And please keep in mind that this here is the name of your login form. So how can you find the name? Well, you go to loginform.fmx and then you click on the form. So not any of these controls inside the form, but on the form itself. So you click on the form and then you go to properties, and here you will find a property called name. And as you can see, the name of this form is my login form, and that is the name that you will use from your C++ code in order to refer to this form here. So let's return to main_form.cpp, and here I have said when my user clicks on login navigation button, I will do this part here. So I will say my login form show, and then what I want to do for my registration form, let's go to main_form.fmx and double click on this registration button, and here it had created another handler, and this is the handler for our registration navigation button. So here I'm going to say my registration form show. So I will say my registration form and then show. Okay, now one more thing that you need to do in order to be able to invoke these two functions, because this still does not work, and I'm going to prove that by running the program. And as you can see, here we have two errors which say here use of undeclared identifier my login form, and then use of undeclared identifier my registration form. There are two more things that you need to do, and those are the following. Here, after you say include myform.h, you also need to say include loginform.h and also include registrationform.h, because that is the file where these two forms have been declared. So I will say here include, and then I will use quotations, and inside I will say loginform.h. So I will include this file here, and then I also need to do the same for registration form. So I'm going to copy this, paste it here, and I will say include registration form, like this. Okay, so that should fix these two errors that we have here. And if I run my program, as you can see, the program runs successfully. So if I click on login, it opens login form. I'm going to close it. And then if I click on registration, it opens registration form. So with this, we have successfully created user interfaces, and then we have also built the logic of navigating to our login form and our registration form. So the next step is to build the logic. So how can we register a user, and then how can we log in a user? And the first one that I want to work on will be registration form. So what is going to happen when our user clicks this save button? Well, the logical behavior is that we get the data that our user has entered into these 4 edits, and then we save that data. And we are going to save that data into a file. And if you're not familiar with reading and writing into a file, I'm going to link a video here, and I will also link it in the description. And in that video, I explained step by step everything that you need to know about writing and reading from a file. So make sure to watch that video first, because I will just use that code. I'm not going to explain it in this video because I want to make it a little bit shorter. So let's create a handler for this save button. I'm going to double click on the button, and as you can see here, it says save button click. So here we are going to describe what is going to happen when our user enters the data and then clicks save on the registration form. So in order to be able to write and read from files, the first thing that you need is you need to include fstream like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an object of type fstream, and I will call it my file. Okay, and then I want to open this file that I just created, so I will say my file dot open, and here I'm going to specify two things. The first thing is going to be the name of the file, and if that file does not exist, it is going to create that file. So let's say that the name of the file will be registered users .txt. Okay, and then the mode in which I want this file to be opened is going to be iOS app, which means I want to append into this file. So after I have created and opened this file, I need to make sure that it has been opened successfully before I start writing into that file. So I will say if my file is open. So if this file here indeed is opened successfully, here I'm going to put the code to write into that file. So what kind of information are we going to save into this file? Well, navigate yourself to this design part of our registration, and we are going to use the text from these 4 edits, and we will save that text into this file here. So I will create a variable of type ANSI string, okay, and I will call it name. And inside this variable here, I'm going to store the text from this edit here. So the name of that edit is name edit. And how do I know that? Well, if you go to this form and then click on this edit here and navigate yourself to the name property, you will see that its name is name edit, and that is the name that we gave to these edits. So that is why I changed all of the names, because default names are edit 1, edit 2, 3, 4, and so on, and that is not very user-friendly. So I will navigate myself back to registrationform.cpp, and here I will say that this first variable called name will store the value of name edit and its text property. I just need to use capital T here, and I'm just going to copy this 4 times because we have 4 edits. 2, 3, 4. So the name of this second variable is going to be age, and then here I will say age edit, and then username, and here it will be username edit, and here I will say password, and then password edit text, like this. So once I have stored the text from these edits into these variables, what I'm going to do now is I will just write the values from these 4 variables into this file here. So I will say my file, and then I will use this redirection symbol, and the first value that I'm going to store will be name, and then I will put this redirection symbol, and I will use a delimiter, which means that I will separate these 4 values with a special symbol, and that special symbol is called delimiter, and I will use comma because that is the one that is used most often. So name, comma, and then age, and then comma again, and then username. I just noticed that here it says use ear name, so username with 1 E, and then copy that same name here so that we are sure that we didn't spell it wrong, and then comma again, and then the last one will be password. Okay, and at the end I will put a new line like this. And then one more thing that we have to do after we finish writing into a file is we need to close that file. So how do we do that? Well, we just say myfile.close. Okay, and then another thing that I also did is when we close this file and we save this data into our file, what I want to do is I also want to close this registration form because there is no reason for it to be opened anymore. So I will say this close as well. And this command here is going to close the file, and then this command here is going to close the registration form. So let's test this code that we have written, and let's see if all of this data is going to be stored into a file called registered users. So I will run the program. Okay, I will navigate myself to registration form, and then here I will enter the name, let's say Saldina, and then age is 26, username is CodeBeauty, and then password is CodeBeauty123. So if I click save, as you can see, the form has been closed. So the way for us to check if all of this information has been stored into a file called registered users is to manually find this file and check what kind of data is inside that file. So let's do that. Please open your File Explorer and then click on Documents, and here you are going to find a folder called Embarcadero, and then Studio, Projects, Windows 32, and then Debug, and here you are going to look for a file called registeredusers.txt, and that file is here. It says registered users, and if I double click on that file, it opens on my second monitor. But as you can see, here is all of the information that we stored into this file, which means that we have successfully stored the information from our registration form. And one thing, please don't change the content of this file manually. Do that only through your C++ code. So let's close this file, and then I will also minimize this. And the conclusion is that this handler here, save button on click handler, works as it should. So that means that we are left with one more task, and that is to create a logic for our login form. So what is going to happen when our user enters username and password and clicks login? That is the next step. So let's click on loginform.fmx, and I will create a handler for this login button. Double click on it, and here is our handler. Here we are going to write the logic which is going to be executed when the user clicks on a login button. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to create an object of type fstream. So I also want to create a file, because here we are going to read from a file. And in order to be able to create an object of type fstream, you first need to say include fstream, like this, and then you can say fstream my file, and then let's open this file here. Let's say myfile.open, and the file that I want to open is the same file that I created and that I used to write the information into on my registration.cpp. So I'm going to copy the name of the file, and I will return to loginform.cpp, and here I will say registeredusers.txt, and then the mode in which I want to open this file is going to be iOS in, which means that I will read from this file. So I will input from this file into this program here. So the next step is to again make sure that this file has been opened successfully. So you say if my file is open, and then here inside this if block we are going to write the logic to read from a file. Again, if you're not familiar with this, make sure to watch the video in the description and then come back and watch this video. So the first thing that I will do inside this if block is I will create a variable of type string. So std string, and I will call that variable line. And this line variable will represent one record from our file. So it will represent one user, data about one user. And in order to be able to use this string type, you need to say here, include string, like this. Okay, so the next thing that I will do is I will use while loop in order to iterate through this file here and read line by line. So for that I will say get line. So please get line from this file here and then store it into this variable here, and do that while you have more lines to read. One thing that we need to do when we read a line from our file is we need to parse that line, and that means that we need to convert it into a format that is going to be easier to work with. So if you remember our file called registered users, it looked something like this. First we had name, which is Saldina, and then we had this comma symbol, which is called delimiter, and then we had age, so 26, and then username, which was CodeBeauty, and then again this delimiter, comma symbol, and then we had password, which was CodeBeauty123. So what it means to parse this line here is to separate this name and then this age and username and password, and for that we are going to use this delimiter because, as you can see, it clearly separates one information from the other. Okay, so let me type the function that is going to parse this line, and then I'll be back and explain what is happening in that function. So here I created a function called parse, delimited string, and that function returns vector of strings, and then it receives only one string parameter called line, and that line is one record from our file, so the information about one user. Now, one very important thing is that in order to be able to use vector and in order to be able to use this string stream that we use inside this function, make sure to include vector here and then also stream. And if you haven't included string, make sure to do so as well. So the behavior of this function is the following. First, we create a vector of strings called result, and that is the variable that we will return from our function, as you can see. And then you create a string stream object called stream, and then you pass to that object the line that you received as the parameter of this function. Now, after you have created your stream, what you do is you will iterate through that stream while it does not have any error. So while this stream is good, you are going to iterate through it, and inside this while loop you will do the following. So create a variable called substring, so substr, that is substring, and then you will use this getLine function to do the following. So you will read from this stream here, so from the line that you received as the parameter, and you will read a substring of that line until you come to this delimiter. And then when you come to this delimiter, you will take that substring and you will push it into this results vector, and you will do that again and again and again, and then once you don't have anything else to read, you will leave this while loop and then you will return the result. So let me show you how this works visually on an example that we have inside our notepad file so that you can understand better. So this is the line that we received as a parameter of our function. So what this function does is the following. First, it creates a vector of strings called result. So let's do that. And for now, it is going to be an empty vector. And then it creates a stream and it passes this line to this stream. And then it goes into a while loop. And we are going to read from this line in the following way. So first, we create a variable called substring. So substr. And for now it is empty, and then we read from this stream here, so we read from this line here, and we read a substring, as you can see here, until we come to a comma delimiter. So we read, and then we come to this comma delimiter. And then what this line here does is it is going to store this Saldina substring into this variable here, and it will remove this delimiter. Okay, and then we go to this line here which says results.pushback substring. So what that does is it takes this Saldina substring and it pushes it into our results vector. And then we go back to our while loop, we check if there is more text to be read, and yes, there is. So we create a new substring which is going to be empty, and then we read from this line here again. So we read a new substring until we come to this comma delimiter, and then we take that substring, store it in this variable here, we remove this comma delimiter, and then this results.pushback substring will push this value into our results vector like this, and then we do the same again and again and again until we don't have any more text to read in this line. So until this here happens. Okay, and at that point we already have all of the values from our line stored into our results vector. So we just return that results vector to this function here, and what we can do now is we can access all of these values using indexes. So this first value, this Saldina, which is our name, has the index of 0, and then this has the index of 1, 2, and then 3. So that is what we have achieved by using this parse comma delimited string function. So to return to our login button on click function, what I said is that this line here that we are reading from our file is not actually in a good format, so it has to be parsed into a format that is easier to work with, and that is exactly what we have achieved in this function here. So now what we need to do is we need to invoke that function and store the result into a vector. So I will create std vector, and it will be a vector of string like this, and I will call it result vector or parsed line, whichever one you want. So I will say, for example, parsed line like this, and here I will invoke a function called parse comma delimited string, and I will pass a line to that function, this line here. Now, one very important thing, please make sure to create this function before this function here that is invoking it, because if you position this function after this login button on click, it is not going to work. So as I said, now this parsed line vector can be used in order to access all of those individual properties by using their index. So the property that I need first is going to be username, because what I want to do first is I want to check if our user has entered the username that we have stored into our registered users file. So let's find the username property inside this parsed line. So I will create a const char pointer. I will call it username. Okay, and I will access that username by using this parsed line vector, and then I will say, please give me what you have at the position of 2, because username has the index of 2. How do I know that? Well, if I return here, you will see that first we stored name, which has the index of 0, and then age, which has the index of 1, and then username, which has the index of 2, and password has the index of 3. Remember that because we are going to need it later. So I will return to loginform.cpp, and with this line here, I have stored the username from this parsed line vector into this variable here. Now, if I try to run this program, let's see what is going to happen. And we have an error which says here, okay, so it says no viable conversion to const char pointer, and it is at this line here. And the error that we are having is very hard for most beginners to fix, and the error is actually that this here is not a const char pointer, which means that after we have accessed the property at position 2, now we need to convert that into a C string. So I will say CSTR like this, and this method here is going to convert this into a variable that can be stored inside our const char pointer username. So if I run my program now, as you can see, our program runs successfully and the error has disappeared. Now, after we have stored the username from our file into this variable here, what we need to do is we need to compare this username, so the username from our file, with the username from our edit, so the username that our user entered, the user that is trying to log in. So, in order to do that, I'm going to use a function called strcmp, and I will show you how that function works. But the first thing that I need to do is I need to take the value that our user has entered into this field here. So how can we do that? Well, I'm going to create a variable of type ANSI string like this, and I will call it edit username. So this is the username from our edit control, and here I will store the value from our username edit text and capital letter T. And this here is the name of our input field. So this is the name of this control here. Okay, and then this is the variable that we just created. Now, one important thing is that in order to be able to compare this variable here and this variable here to check if they contain the same text, we need to convert this into a const char pointer as well. So how am I going to do that? I will say const char pointer, and let's say username string like this, and I will say that it is equal to edit username to CSTR format. So this here is going to convert this value into a C string. Okay, so now we can compare this value and this value here. So as I said, in order to do that, we are going to use a function called strcmp. So I will say if std strcmp, so string compare, and this function here receives two parameters. It receives two strings that it needs to compare. So the first one is this one, and then the second one is this username string, and this string compare function will return the value of 0 if these two strings are the same. So here I will say, please string compare username and username string, and if you return 0, that means that the username from our file is the same to the username that our user has entered into our login form. So what are we going to do when we conclude that these two strings are the same? Well, the answer is that we need to do the same for passwords. So now I need to read the password from this parsed line, and then I need to take the password from our password edit, the same way that we did here, and then we are going to compare the passwords, and if passwords match, that means that our user can log in successfully. So let's do that. Let's create a const char pointer called password, and here I will store the password from this parsed line, so the password from our file. I'm going to copy this and paste it here, and the position of our password was index 3, so this is our password. And then after we have stored the password from our file, what I need to do now is I need to take the password from our password edit. So I'm going to copy this part here and then paste it below, and I'm just going to change the names. So Here, instead of saying edit username, I will say edit password, like this. And then here, instead of taking the text from username edit, I will take the text from password edit, like this. And then after we have stored that text into this variable here, it is of type ANSI string, so now we need to convert it into a const char pointer. So I will say password string will be equal to this variable here to C string. So please convert this ANSI string into a C string and store that into this variable called password string. Okay, so now that we have this password from our edit and then this password from our file, what I'm going to do again is I will use this string compare function once more in order to find out if these two are the same. So I will say if std strcmp, so if string compare of this variable here and then this variable here returns 0, that means that they are the same. And in that situation, here I am going to write out the message which says you have successfully logged in. And then if they are not the same, I will write out a message which says an error happened or wrong password. Now, one thing that we have forgot, and if you already know what we have forgot, please write that in the comment section before I answer it. So, one thing that we have forgot is we forgot to create a label that we will use in order to write that message. So here on our login form.fmx, what I need to do is I need to add a label, okay, label, and I will put it here, and I will change the name of that label. It's going to be called message label, and we are going to use this message label in order to write out the message of either success or error. So let's return to our login form.cpp, and here in this if block, so if these two are the same, if password and password string are the same, I will say that message label, its text will be equal to success, okay? And then if this here results as false, so if this function returns some other value which is not 0, that means that the password that our user entered and the one inside our file, they are not the same. So instead of writing out success, I am going to write out error, or let's say wrong password, like this. Okay, and let's add exclamation mark here as well. So what are we going to do now is we will test the code that we have written so that we make sure that we don't have any bugs. So let's run our program, and we have an error. It says unexpected, and then we have this column sign. Where is it? It is here. So instead of std column sign string compare, we just wrote one column sign, so I'm going to add another one. And if we run our program, now we can try to log in our user. So I will click on login. And one thing that we also didn't do is we did not remove default text from this label. So this should be empty by default. We are going to do that later. Let's now test the functionality of logging in the user. So I will say username CodeBeauty, like this. And then password was CodeBeauty123, if I'm not wrong. 123. Okay, so if I click on login, as you can see, it says success. And then if I type in wrong password, so 1234, and click on login, it is going to say wrong password. Okay, so that means that this function here works as it should. Now, let's very quickly fix the error that we had. So this message label, we are just going to remove this default text. So now if I run the program and then I click on login, as you can see, there is no default text inside our label. So I return back to loginform.cpp because I want to give you a few tips. there are quite a few things that you can do in order to improve this program, and there are also a few bugs. And I will give you hints on how you can fix those bugs later. But now I want to give you one very important advice, and I want to explain one very important concept in programming. So for all the people who have been watching this video the entire time, this is a bonus. And this is one of the most important principles in programming. And that is the principle of dry, which means don't repeat yourself. So there is one thing that we can do here in this function so that we don't repeat the code that we have already written. So can you recognize what that thing is? If you can, pause the video, write it in the comments, and then listen to my explanation. So if you look at these two lines here and then at these two lines here, you will notice that they do the same thing. They perform the same logic, but they just perform it on a different data. So what we can do now is we can create a function that is going to perform that logic, and then we are going to pass a parameter to that function. In one situation, it is going to be this parameter, and then in another situation, it is going to be this parameter here. And then we can use that function whenever we need to perform that logic. In this situation, that is only 2 times, but it can as well be 5 or 10 or 100 times. So that is what I'm going to explain now, and that is the principle of don't repeat yourself. So create a function, put that logic into a function, and then invoke that function whenever you need a specific logic to be executed. So let's create a function here, and I will call that function convert to char pointer. And to be more specific, that function is going to convert ANSI string to a char pointer. And we are going to use that to convert this username edit and then this password edit as well. So let's create a function that returns const char pointer, and it is called convert to char ptr. So convert to char pointer. That function is going to receive ANSI string, and I will call that parameter ANSISTR, so ANSI string. And the job of that function will be to return ANSISTR to CSTR, like this. So it will take this parameter here, and then it will perform this logic and return it here. So now what I can do is, instead of invoking this code here, I will comment it. Okay. And then instead of using this username string variable, which we created here, it does not exist anymore because it has been commented. What I can do is I can invoke this function called convert to char ptr. I will invoke it here. And to that function, I will pass this parameter here. So I will pass username edit text, like this. And everything should work as expected. Okay, and now in order to obey this principle of don't repeat yourself, I will do the same here. So I will do the same for our password edit. So instead of passing password string, which is this parameter here that has been commented, I will again invoke a function, convert to char ptr, that we just created. And to that function, I will pass this parameter here. So password edit text. So if I run my program, I expect to get the same behavior that we had previously because there were no changes in the logic. We just optimized our code a bit. So let's run the program. Okay, and if I click on login and then type CodeBeauty and then type CodeBeauty, code BEATY 123, and I click login, as you can see, it successfully logged in this user. And then if I click 1, 2, 3, 4, as you can see, that is wrong password. So let's close the program, and you can delete this, but I will just leave it so that you can compare this code here and then this function here, and so that you can see how dry principle works, so how don't repeat yourself principle works. So as I said, there are a couple more problems that I noticed in this program, and I will explain them. I will give you a couple of hints, and I will leave them to you so that you can fix them, because when you are learning, you want to solve as many problems as possible, because that is the best way to learn. So the first thing that I notice is if I run this program, okay, and I click on login, and if I try to log in, if I say CodeBeauty and then let's type a password, doesn't matter which password, and I click on login, so it's wrong password. Let's close this form and let's see what is going to happen if I open it again. Okay, so after I open this form again, as you can see, these fields, these edits have not been cleared, and then this message here still remains. So that is the first thing that you should do. So you should clear these edits and then remove this message when this form is opened. So that is the first thing. The second thing is that this login button should be disabled when we don't have any values inside these two fields. And as you can see, it is not disabled, which means that if I click on this login button, it is trying to execute the logic in the background, and that should not happen because there is no sense to execute this logic because we have not entered any values into these fields. So that is something that you can do on your own as well. But in order to prove what I just said, I'm going to close this program, okay, and I will run it in a debug mode. So I will put a breakpoint here, and I will click on run, and here I will click run. So instead of run without debugging, I will just click run, which means that it will run the code into debugging mode. So if I click on login, and then I click this login button without entering any values into these fields, as you can see, the execution of our program stopped on this breakpoint, which means that even though we have not entered any values for our password and username, this login button on click is still being executed when we click it. And that is a problem because it is slowing our program down, and it is also a potential issue, security issue for our application. So if I click F8, 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 as you can see, it is executing line by line. So that is second thing that you can fix. And the third thing is something that you can also discover by debugging this program. And if you're not familiar with debugging, please let me know if you would like me to make a video where I would explain how to debug programs and how to fix those bugs, so we can even continue working on this program and we can together fix these bugs. If you want, let me know in the comments. So, as I said, the third bug that is present here is the following. Let's close this and let's add a new user. Let's register a new user. So let's say Anna, age is going to be 30, and then username is going to be Anna1, and password is going to be Anna123. Okay, so I'm going to save this user. Okay, now what is going to happen if I go to my login and I try to log in CodeBeauty user? So I type here CodeBeauty, and then password was CodeBeauty123. 123. Okay, before I click on this login button, I will put a breakpoint on this line here. So this line that puts success message on our screen. And I will remove this breakpoint because we don't need it anymore. This one is going to be enough. So to return to our login form, if I click on this login button, let's see what is going to happen. So the execution of our program stopped on this line here. So message label text is equal to success, which means that it is going to show this success message on our form. And then if I press F8, let's see what is going to happen. So if I press it one more time, and then again, we are going back to our while loop, even though we have already logged in our user successfully and found that user, it is still checking remaining users. Why is that the case? That is the case because we have not finished the execution of our while loop here. So if I click on F8, as you can see, it is trying to parse the second user, okay, and that second user is and a 1. And then if we had 10 users or 100 users or 100,000 users, it would go through 100,000 users, even though the first one was success. So there are two ways to fix this bug. The first one is to say break here after you have successfully found your user and logged him in. So you can use break statement, but that is something that I don't advise you to do because it is not very readable. It is not good practice to use break statements with loops. A preferred and a better option would be to create an additional variable that you will initially set to false, and then once you find your user, you will set that variable to true, and then here in your while loop condition, you will also check that variable. So in each iteration, you will check if your user has been successfully logged in the previous iteration. So that is a better option to fix the bug that we have here. And then fourth thing is that now you can use this application in order to build any other application that you want. So you just upgrade this application. So what you would do is after you log in your user successfully, you close login form and you navigate your user to some other form. What kind of form? Well, that depends on what kind of application you are building. And then another thing that I would do is I would give my user only 3 attempts to log in. So what you would do is you would count every wrong password that he enters, and then after he exceeds those 3 attempts, you can block him. And what that means is that you can, for example, store an additional information to your registered users file, which says that a specific user has been blocked. Or you can find any other way that you see fit to solve this problem. So that was all for this video. All the links and everything will be in the description, or I will pin it in a comment. Make sure to check out both. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and then also share it with your friends who would like to learn programming, because if you enjoyed this video, then you can make a big difference in someone's life and help him learn programming. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in some other video. Bye!